Right. Okay, so tonight we're going to be going over listing for rentals, and then writing up leases for rentals, and then how you conduct the new NTN process. I know a lot of you guys recently, especially with the Op City, and some of those, lead generation, office generation tools you have, you've gotten a few rentals. I've gotten a few calls about rentals. So again, I try to keep these training sessions value added. So I kind of take how you guys call me up and say, I need help with rentals, I need help with NTN and so forth. So that's why we're doing rentals tonight, so we can all kind of learn off of each other, right? All right, so I'm going to go like how we did last week with the listing agreements, right, for the residential sales. I'm going to go into command. I'm going to show you the same thing, how we're going to open up an opportunity under lease, right? And then the documents that are in there, connect it with DocuSign, right? We won't go through like all the little steps, right, in DocuSign. You guys kind of, I think, have that under control, right? So I want to focus more on like the content of the contracts. So, what goes into them and so forth. And then on the NTN is, I think, a little bit more, it's not hard, but it's obviously different from what we've been used to. So we'll go through the steps. We have a flow chart and we'll go through the steps. So let me go share my screen. And we'll go into command. And when you're going to the opportunities, right, the little handshake, you've got listings, buyers, and leases, right? And under leases, notice it's just flat leases. It doesn't say leases, landlord, leases, right? It's just one. So when you actually create the opportunity, that's when you say create opportunity, you're going to select it. Here, it actually breaks it down, but it doesn't break it down on the main screen. So here you have listing, buyer, landlord, tenant. So if you're doing a listing agreement for a lease, right, you're going to select landlord, right? Or if you're doing if you're representing the tenant that's looking to apply for a particular lease, you're going to do obviously tenant, right? But always the first step, right? You make sure that they're in your database, right? The client. Otherwise, you can't select them from here, right? So let's do it since we're going to do a rental listing agreement, I'm going to select it as a landlord. Okay, and then we always have been using Raj, right? One day I'm going to send this accidentally. All right.
You tell him you've leased his house, sold his house.
We got a lot going on here. And then, put the address. You guys can label it how you like. I leave it like that. And I put 1, 2, 3, whatever the street is, just so I know when I go to the opportunity, I just can pick it up right away, which one it is. If you want to tag it, that's fine. The lease price is the rental amount for the month, right? Let's just say it's $2,500. And then anything that's got the little asterisk is required. So if it's an active phase or appointment phase, we'll say it's an active phase. In this, you can move around, so it's fine. Accepting applications, okay. And move my little thing here. Hit create. All right. So I think you guys pretty much get the idea here, right? We only care about the property address, right? Nothing on the left. I won't go crazy. We'll do my house. Right. Go to documents. Move this. Okay. So you can see there's several of them here. you guys really don't need a lot for rentals, right? I mean, they're listing pretty much a lot of things here, but the main things you need is you still need a CIS, Consumer Information Statement. You know, if it's lead paint, you know, again, you need the lead paint. The request for an NTN, you need, if you're going to be using an NTN, you're going to have to get authorization from the landlord to use the NTN. So there's a form for that. Always a
What
copy of
is
the
what is the NTN? What does NTN stand for?
National Tenants Network. That's the service we use. So like you may
Okay.
see like Rent Spree, right? Or some people may do things in Zillow, right?
Okay.
But one we have is an account with NTN. So National Tenants Network. So they call it a decision point report. And it used to be you did all 3 checks in NTN. They did income, credit, and criminal.
Okay.
Now they break it up. Now you've got to do it in 2 stages because they passed the law in the New Jersey Fair Housing Act. So you can only do income and credit up front. And then if the landlord so chooses, then they do the criminal check after they've done a conditional acceptance of the tenant. And that's to not discriminate against any criminal activity, basically. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but they pay for all of that. The tenant pays for the report. You know, there's a link that's assigned to Keller Williams. They pay for the report. One thing I'll say is, you know, always verify with pay stubs, because the NTN does not go and verify the income. It's like, you know, they don't dig into it to say, okay, you're employed here, and yes, we're verifying that this is the amount of money that you make. They're going to base their acceptance of your income on what the tenant inputs into the application for the NTN. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
The credit they'll actually check. The credit report they'll run, but the income they won't verify. It's going to be just based on like an honor system. What they're saying is their income is their income. So always supplement it with pay stubs for, you know, and provide that information to the landlord. We'll get into that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so CIS really, lead paint. If you know, you're never really going to do anything else. And then C just has the listing agreement. That's really about it for the rental. You really don't need much. And a dual agency, because chances are you're going to have a dual agency. You know, usually when you're the landlord, usually representing the landlord, you usually find a tenant, right? It's not, I mean, the rentals I've done, I'm usually on both sides of it. It's a great way, by the way, rentals are a wonderful way to get a couple units, easy units added on. You know, they won't add dollar value much, but it's a really great way if you just need like a few extra units here and there to meet a certain goal. And then of course, you know, people always say, oh, there's so much work, there's so much work. You know, they're work, but they have sometimes the biggest potential comes out of these rentals. I mean, these rentals, they'll eventually buy from you. You know, if you maintain a relationship, these are people who are renting and will eventually buy. And then the landlords are investors, right? You develop a really good relationship with them. Chances are they may buy more properties. They have other properties already. And I always use the example where when I'm reaching out to verify like references that's on an application, you know, I'm calling up their existing landlord, right? And I've gotten investor clients that way too, calling up their existing landlord. Because he was like, oh, do you sell and buy and, you know, in this area? I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, and you pick up clients that way too. So it's a great way. Don't look at it as, you know, these are a lot of work and I'm not getting a lot of commission. You know, there is tremendous potential.
It's quick money.
It's quick. It's quick because, you know, you don't have to wait. And so for example, if if the lease starts on September the 1st and it's August the 1st, you don't have to wait till September the 1st. You know, you can collect the payments, finish it off, close it out, right? And be done with it. It's quick, like I said. Just got to find the tenants and, you know, you're off to the races. So, all right. So here, you guys do the same thing, right? Start a transaction, and we'll go in and we'll take a look at what some of these documents are. I mean, the listing agreement's the listing agreement. I don't think we need to go too deep into that, right? You guys know how the residential sale was, right? We'll just go over like what the commissions, how you do commissions. You guys know how to do what the commissions are for a rental?
No,
No, that was one of my questions, Sophia. So if you could answer that would be
Jimmy,
great.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's usually 1 month rent split between tenants, agent, and you. So in
Okay.
this
And
case,
who, sorry, just a follow-up, who pays it? Is it always
landlord
landlord or?
typically pays it. The landlord typically pays it, but he does have the discretion. Like if he says, no, I don't want to pay it, I only want to pay half of it, and then the tenant pays half, he can do that. Or he can also say, I'm not going to pay any of it, make the tenant pay it. But I would say majority of the time, 9 out of 10, not more, landlord pays it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So if we're going to add documents, then we'll take a look. I just want to really show you the documents like for the NTN primarily, like where they're located, because sometimes people have trouble finding them. But the Garden State, the listing agreement, here, you actually do, I don't know if this is really applicable to how to use, because that might be an older one. But let's see here. This screening authorization, that's the form I want to show you for landlords to give you authority to use the NTN. There's a lease application, which I know Shalini knows very, very well now. Right, Shalini? Residential lease. Landlord, dual consent. And usually when you're doing these rentals, whether you bring a tenant in or somebody else brings a tenant in, usually the listing agent, the one that's representing the landlord, writes up the lease. It's opposite of when you guys are putting in an offer where the buying agent writes up the offer and submits it. In this case, you as the listing agent usually writes up the lease.
Isn't lease usually a standard form that you can
Yeah,
just?
there's a form. It's a standard form. It's a contract of sale,
Right, so you can.
but from a
basically do that, right?
from a rental perspective.
Right.
So in this case, if you want to call it contract of sale, which is the lease, it's written by the listing agent in this case. It's not drafted up by the buying side or the tenant side. Because you, as the representative of the landlord, you know the details of what you want the lease to look like. You see? And then you send it to the tenant to sign. It's opposite. All right, and then yes, CIS, okay, lease application, screening, dual agency. I mean, that's really about it. And
What
then
about the NTN?
yeah, we can add that. Usually that's going to be from like the buying side, but I'm just going to add it all here so you guys can kind of see it in one, you know. But I want to show you really quick while we're here. So I'm going to kind of like describe the process, and then you guys kind of already are familiar with like a residential sale and how it relates in the lease, right? So you know how in a residential sale, you are presenting an offer, right? In this case, you can equate an offer with a lease application, right? So you're gonna take them, you're gonna show them the rental. They're gonna say, oh, I like it, and then they're gonna apply for it, right? And so you have a lease application. So when you click on that, right? This is the standard form, like the lease application. So the easiest way is to literally just print this form out and just email it to your tenant, your prospective tenant, and let them fill it out. This is there for them to fill out. And to go along with this, I tell them, give me your pay stubs and a credit report. So you're pre-screening them with this.
Wait,
It's
you
almost
have
like
to
a-
run the
it's a-
credit report, or you have to run the credit report and charge
No,
them?
no, they will run it. It's easy. You can just run a credit report easily online. They
Oh,
should
okay.
have one. Yeah. So let them provide you with a credit report and pay stubs.
Okay.
Okay. And that's sort of like you're pre-screening them before you get into the NTN. The NTN costs $40 to run with each of them. So you don't want them to have to go through the process and then, without pre-screening them. So just pre-screen them. And this is like a pre-approval. This is like you are now acting as the mortgage person. You are now, the kind of the all-in-one person, right? So you're pre-screening them. So this is like a pre-approval / offer in one, right? So get the pay stubs because you're going to need those pay stubs, like I was saying, to verify income. Because they're going to input when they actually run the do the NTN, put the information in. The NTN is not verifying income. They're just saying, okay, in good faith, they told me what exactly they make. And then they run the report based on what they said that they make. But they will verify credit. The NTN will verify the credit. So let them fill this out. So here it has for applicant, it has the address, what their current occupation is, their income, who their current employer is. If there's a co-applicant, they'll put that here. They'll also put the current landlord's information. Do they have any pets? All that's really important, right? You got to ask those questions. And then they put here references, and I call all the references. Co-applicants references, banking information. This part you can see, this is where it talks about the brokerage, who's paying it, landlord or tenant. And then here, I leave these blank because if you're the buying side, you really don't know, usually there's no application fee except for the NTN. You do know, there is going to be a security deposit, but I usually leave these blank because you don't know the dates yet. And then they sign it. They sign it, and that's the application. So they have references on here, their income, like I said, their current landlord, their occupation. And then you attach pay stubs, credit report, and that way you present this to the landlord. The landlord has a pretty good idea if it's going to be somebody that's going to be a good tenant or not, right? And as the real estate agent, I would call the references and report back to the landlord what I found. So that's your application. You guys, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then when you are, representing the landlord, this is the authorization form for them to fill out, authorizing you that you can use the NTN. Very simple. All applicants, whether a client of Keller Williams or any office, are required to apply for both decision point and multi-state criminal report at applicant's expense to be considered for tenancy. So you're running decision point, like I said, is income, credit. And then the second part is the criminal report. And it's $40 per person, 18 years old and above. So if there's going to be 2 adults, each of them needs to do an NTN. And when they do it, they're saying that they're applying as co-applicants. So the NTN will give 2 reports. It'll give one for applicant 1, one for applicant 2, and then it'll do a combination of the 2.
Even
And
if
the
they're
reason-
married or not married?
What's
Whether
that?
Whether they're married or not
Yeah,
married?
whether they're married or not married. It could be mom and dad living with you, 4 people. I mean, every adult that's 18 and over needs to fill one out. That's the rule. And the more people there are, the higher the income, because they group the income together. And usually in NTN, the criteria is 3 times the rent. So you understand that. Make sure, Because if an apartment is a townhouse, let's say it was 2,500 a month, NTN is looking for 7,500 a month income. 3 times.
Even
So-
if even if somebody is over 18 but not employed, do they still need to do the NTN?
Yes.
Oh.
So they're looking for 3 times the income. And that's to cover, you know, utilities, because there's more than just the rent, right? Utilities, insurance, living expenses. It's a huge bar, guys. I have to say, it's a pretty big bar to, you know, to meet 3 times. It's a lot of money. You know, that's why, you know, you don't see a lot of single people doing this, right? It's always like couples, or they have their families living there all together. They group the income together. So that's why you're going to get different, you're going to get individual reports, and then you're going to get a combined report. So they may reject them as an individual, but they would accept them as a group. Do you see my point? Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. I think it's a very high standard to rent. It's not easy, you know, it's really not.
Especially today.
Yeah, people think it's like so easy. Oh, I can't find a house, I'm just gonna go rent. You know, if you're gonna go through this process, I mean, it's a huge standard to meet. So this is the form the landlords fill out giving you authorization. They may say, ah, I don't care. That would be great, right? So they say does not want to use it. You know, saves you guys headaches too. You know, I tell the landlords totally up to them. You know, sometimes, you know, just base it off the application, right? And call it a day, right? Why complicate things, right? Some people, you know, are not like investors, or they don't do this regularly. It's maybe just like the first time, and, you know, they want to make sure they get good candidates, and they want to run the NTN. But, you know, if it's a seasoned guy that's like, does a lot of investing, he may say, oh, I don't need to run that. You know what I mean? I personally wouldn't. Just my, you know, I would just base it off application, meeting with them, right? Take your chances, but
So this is not a requirement, it's just an option.
yeah, it's not a requirement. And that's why you're going to get permission from the landlord. The landlords may want it, and they may say, I don't care for it, you know? So this form is kind of like your yes or your no. Do they want it or do they not want it?
Got it.
And then, of course, you know, the CIS you have, make sure you fill out the dual agency, because chances are you're going to be a dual agent. And then, of course, you have the, which one is this? The listing agreement? Oh, this is the lease. Okay. You guys know, like with the listing agreement, right? It's basically the same one, like let's say for Garden State. Here, this one. But instead of filling it out for a sale, you're going to fill it out for a rental. I'll show you really quick. Okay. Right, all of this will be filled in, right? And then here you would, and the sale. And then the rental, let's say it was 2,500. Put the commencement date, right? You're going to be a dual agent, right? You'll fill all this out. And then here you'll say no, 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 because these are for sales, right? This is the sale side. You're looking at the rental side. So, you know, I usually do no for this. Only for the tenants broker, I say yes. And then the compensation, I say half a month. They're going to get half a month from the total month. And then the sale commission, you know, with NA, rental commission 2,500, because that's the rent for the month. And then the split. The reason I don't say here 1,250, why wouldn't I just write here 1,250?
You're not sure what the exact rent is going to be.
Right. Correct, yeah. So you always just say half a month. Because they could come in and say, hey, I'm gonna give you 2,600. You know, there might be a bidding war for the rental, right? So you don't want to say exactly, okay, half of 2,500. You always want to say half of a month. And then minus whatever you want to put there, minus 50. And then this part is a little bit of cover for you, this section. And I'll read it really quick. The commission shall be earned when a ready, willing, able buyer tenant is produced time of transfer of the property by signing the agreement. The commission, okay, in the event the property is sold to the tenant during the term of its tenancy, the sale commission shall be paid by the owner to the listing broker if sold to the tenant by. So what that is telling you is, if you've just now provided a tenant, you've gotten a tenant for this landlord, and let's say you have a year lease, and now 3 months in or 2 months in, the tenant's like, I want to buy it. And they choose to, they go under contract to buy it. This is your protection as the agent that got the tenant, that you should be entitled to a commission. So usually I just say here 3 months. So let's say 3 months in, they say, you know, 2 months in that they want to buy it, then you're entitled to a commission.
Is there a time frame that you can put, like a maximum? Can you put like a year or no?
It's no. I
3 months.
usually see like 3 months, you know. I mean, you can push it a little bit, but basically that's to cover you, because sometimes some of these landlords may rent it and then sell it to them to bypass like commissions and so forth. You see what I mean?
I think you can do that lease period. I think you can do that, because when we rented our apartment, I mean our townhome, the listing agent, no, yeah, I think you can use the term, the lease term. Doesn't have to be 3 months.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. I usually will do like 3 months. I mean, you can pretty much do whatever you want, but I try to be reasonable, you know?
And
You can
Yeah,
do longer.
yeah.
You can do longer. I just try to be reasonable. You don't want to tie them in either too much, you know, they feel like, but it's totally up to you. Like if you wanted to do 12 months or you wanted to say lease term, you know, that's okay. You know, you could do that too.
Where do you find where you put minus 50 to potential cooperating brokers? Where do you
This
find the amount
is
that you?
arbitrary. This is completely arbitrary. You guys pick whatever you want to put there.
Okay.
This is like your little bonus that you're adding onto the MLS. You ever see when you go in and I'll say minus 50, minus 100, minus, now they're
Yes.
getting greedy, right? Now I'm seeing 150, 200. It's basically, you're covering your, as an agent, you're covering these little fees that add up when you're
Okay.
listing something. So like for, when you go, you know, when you input a listing in the Garden State MLS, it's, you know, like they charge you $25 fee
Okay.
for a listing. So that's covering that. And then you're covering, okay, maybe it'll last like a couple months while it's on there. So that might go up to 50, right? Then you might have like other little expenses in between, right? So, I mean, for a rental, I'll do 50. For a sale, I'll do like 100, right? But
Okay.
now people have gotten like greedy and they'll do like more, you know?
Okay.
Yep. So that's pretty much very simple on this. But you guys understand why we're saying half a month, right? Because this price could change, so it's half a month. Okay. And then, you know, you always do the save and close, but here I'm not going to do that because it's asking me for all these things. Oh, here I just gotta put 0, I guess. Right. Okay, so let's go into, so now you have it listed. You have an applicant. Okay. Do you want to do the NTN? We'll do logic in a sequence. We'll run an NTN first before we do a
quick
lease.
question, Sophia. So when you're doing a lease application, is that your formal lease as well, or is that a
No,
separate step?
application only.
That's
It's like think of it as it's your offer.
Okay, got it. So
It's your offer with your pre-approval attached.
so what about the final lease then?
Okay, so we'll jump into that. So let's say you ran the NTN, and we'll go into the NTN.
Okay.
Let's say you ran the NTN, and they said, okay, we're gonna accept, we found a tenant, we're gonna accept them. So this is now your lease, residential lease, which is now the official offer, right? And it's not gonna be written by the tenant's agent, it's gonna be written by the landlord's agent. Okay, so this is the lease. So it's very, it looks similar to, it's the contract of sale, basically. Okay. You're gonna put in the information, the landlord information, the tenant information. I should pull one up I did and show you. That might be the easiest one that's already filled out. Let's see. Lease application. Okay, here. Can you guys see that? It's loading up, I guess. Slowly.
Yeah, not
There you
yet.
go.
Oh, there it is.
You
Yeah,
can see
it's
it?
up. Yes, it's up.
Okay, good. There we go. Slow. So you can see I had the landlords, right? The address where they reside. It doesn't have, it's, you know, they're somewhere else, right? They're living somewhere else, so this is a different address. The tenants and, oops, the tenants information, property information here, like where the property is located that they're gonna lease. The term of the lease, so how long? Is it gonna be a year, 2 years, right? Whatever the term is, when it's gonna start and when it's gonna end. The rent. It's gonna be due on the first of each month, and you're gonna say who it's gonna be payable to. Initial deposit. No initial, okay. The first month rent or an eight, okay. The balance shall be paid as follows. First month's rent, 2,500 is gonna be due on or before, you're gonna list the date with this is a security deposit due on this day. You guys know how much security deposit?
Yeah,
1.5 months.
Right, max. Now, if somebody says, oh, I have a pet, I want to give you extra deposit if I can have a pet. Can you accept that or not accept that?
No.
Right, the max is 1.5. So like you can't do 1.5 and then I want another 200 security for the pet. You can't do that in New Jersey. It's got to be 1.5 max. You guys understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. And where do I keep the security deposit? When you get the security deposit and you give it to, obviously the landlord's going to keep it. Where does that security deposit go?
It's
Interest-bearing
interest-bearing account.
Right. So it's like an escrow. The landlord's almost is opening up like an escrow. And he can't commingle with his own personal, you can't commingle it collecting rent. It has to be its own separate account. Right? Can't be commingled.
So how do you verify that? I mean, we don't have to, do we?
You have to just guide them and tell them to do that.
Okay.
You guys should also supply to them the New Jersey tenants rules and regulations for landlords. It's a website. You should just give them that link. So, and you guys should actually read that too, because that actually has a lot of valuable information. Like it tells you what the rules are, like how much security deposit maximum you can do. All those things is written in there, how it has to be in an interest-bearing account. It can't be commingled. It's all in there. So you guys should actually read that. You have to guide the landlord into doing the right thing, right? But ultimately, it's their responsibility.
What website was that?
Let's see.
Sophia, it's so funny. You rented this 39 Gallup Lane. I just had a showing on 48 Gallup Lane the other day.
Yeah, it's a
Saturday.
good community. It's a very good community.
Yeah,
What's
that
going
house
rent now?
townhomes was listed 419.
Oh, it was for sale. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right, let's see if I can find you the, your rentals. Okay, truth in renting. All right, this is the truth in renting guide. Rights and responsibilities of residential tenants and landlords in New Jersey. I'm gonna take a note of this, so I'm gonna send you guys, I'm gonna because I don't think I can send the link, because I'm looking at it, it's like one of these weird links. It's like one of these Chrome extension links, but I'll go, I mean, if you guys Google truth in renting New Jersey, it will come up. I can download it too and send it to you.
But go down a little further. I think it's right there. Isn't it nj.gov?
yeah.
Where is it at? Oh, yeah, here.
Scroll
see
down a
that?
little bit. Yeah, right
Here,
there.
I'll put
Yeah.
this in the chat. Where's chat? Oh my gosh. All right. Where's my little chat thing? I'm sharing screen, so it's like, it looks different.
Yeah, it's the first link on Google. It comes up like right away.
It does, yeah. All right, if you guys, you can just like take note of it, write it down, because I don't know where my chat button is right now. It's hidden somewhere. And if you just do, if you Google like truth and rent, it's gonna come up anyway. So, but this is like, really take this and read it, because when I did my first rental, I read this. I learned so much, because it's like stuff like you won't really learn like from the book, you know, and it gives you, oh, here's my chat. It gives you the details. Oh, did somebody put it for me? Oh, thank you, Jimmy. Thank you. You found the chat for me.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. And then this is the one that's on the actual page too. So thank you. Yeah, so here it talks about renewing a lease, pets, what's allowed, terminating a lease. You know, you have to, if they terminate, you know, got to be reasonable as far as, you know, what if they don't pay the rent, how much of a fee you charge them, right? You can't say, I'm going to charge you $1,000 for a bounce check. I mean, you know, you can't do that. So there's different, like, you just got to follow this. So I encourage you, if you're going to do it, to just please read this. It has so much info in here. And then share this with the landlord, because ultimately they're the responsible party, right? Landlords need to, they don't realize, landlords, how, you know, the responsibility in a rental. They think, oh, I'm going to rent it and be done. You know, there is a tremendous responsibility when they do rentals. Okay. So where was I? Okay, back to, where was I? DocuSign? Where's
Yeah, DocuSign.
Where's my DocuSign? Where did my DocuSign go? Oh, I probably went over here, just went over it. Okay. Oh, no, I was doing the, I was showing you guys this, right? Yeah.
You were showing
So-
your lease.
Yeah. So here, you know, I did 1.5 security deposit. So you're gonna pay $37.50 security deposit in this case. And this talks about late payments, and this is all in that truth in renting form. You have to be reasonable with the late charge. So I always just do, if they don't pay by the 5th day, then the tenant the tenant shall pay a 5% late charge until the rent is received by the landlord. And then the late charge shall be added to the rent and shall be considered an additional rent. And then if the tenant agrees, they're going to pay $35 processing charge if the rent check basically is bounces. So these are reasonable numbers, right? Some people might say, oh, I want $500 processing. I mean, it's unreasonable. So it's in the truth in renting. It says they use the term loosely, reasonable, because if it does ever go to court, right, small claims, the judge is going to look at, is this a reasonable thing or unreasonable thing? So, you know, stick with just like 5%, 35. Like that's usually a good number. Oops. Okay, utilities. You know, this one had an HOA because it's a townhouse. You know, this talks about all this stuff, access to the property, landlord repairs. So general rule, you know, it's always a common question. Tenants repairs, the tenant's like, well, what am I responsible for? And what's the landlord responsible for? Basically, if you cause the problem as a tenant, you're responsible. You know, even though if a toilet clogs because somebody threw in there a brick, right? The landlord is not on the hook for fixing that. You know, if you put cement, right, in the toilet, right? Landlord's not fit, the tenant fixes that. So it's basically who is at fault. Now, if there's a leak, if a pipe leaks in the house, okay, the landlord's on the hook for that, right? It's basically comes down to whose fault is it. Now, a tenant is also required to get tenant's insurance, renter's insurance. Okay, so the landlord has his home insurance on this, but the tenant is also required to have renter's insurance. And that's their coverage if something happens. Okay, access to the properties. Okay, no alteration, you know, they can't start, you know, installing locks, right? Making alterations to the wallpaper, to the paint, right? It talks about all that. This is where it talks about the insurance, what I just mentioned, that they're responsible for obtaining at their own cost, tenant's insurance policy. All right, liability of landlord and tenant. So landlord's not legally responsible for loss or damage, you know. Pets, this is where it talks about the no pets are allowed. And now if you are going to allow pets, then you can add a little blurb at the end to say that there's going to be a pet. Okay, renewal of the lease. So what at the lease end, I usually put in my leases that not less than 60 days before the expiration, that the landlord shall notify the tenants if they're going to allow them to renew the lease. So, and then within 15 days after the tenant receives a landlord's notice, they're supposed to give a response. So basically, 2 months before the lease term is going to end, the landlord is going to open it up if they want to renew the lease. And then 15 days later, the tenant is going to tell the landlord yes or no. And that allows for 45 days. That was my thinking, that if they say, well, we're not going to renew, at least then that gives you 45 days that you can relist it for the landlord and find a new tenant. Okay. Broker's commission, right? I was a listing broker, and then I had, in this case, I had another broker on here. So I had a Remax lady, half a month rents. You had the minus 50 on my listing. Now, if you're a dual, you know, you're going to put your name in both of these. This talks about the lead paint. So if it's before 1978, you'll have like a lead paint addendum. Here, you know, you're putting the business relationships in here. Okay, Megan's law. Okay, so what I do in my leases, this looks like really long, but you know, you want to cover your bases when you're having conversation with the landlord. So they wanted to make slightly modifications to the actual lease itself. So here it's like you're kind of acting like attorney, mortgage person, right? You're all in one. You're all in one. So here in this section 4, so if you go to section 4, talking about the rent, this is, again, this is just, I customize this for my landlord. So this, again, you're going to customize it for your landlord. So I put here, rent payment shall be made payable electronically by method agreed upon between landlords and tenants. So they're going to say, well, I don't want them to physically give me a check. I want to have it Zelled, or I want to have it Venmoed or PayPal, right? Things like that. So I add a little thing in here, provision to say, okay, there's going to be an arrangement made between the two where it's going to be paid electronically. I I also always, if the landlord says, if I decide I want to sell it, I don't want to be locked in because I have a tenant that I can't sell it. So I always just put here, and this language is in there already, but I kind of reiterate it to make it a point. So basically here I just say that the landlord reserves the right to sell the home to a buyer. In such a circumstance, I'll give the tenant adequate notice. I'll do something else here. It says, tenant is required to notify the landlord promptly if there's any repairs needed. My landlord asked for that because they don't want, if there's something wrong, something happened, they want to be told immediately so they can fix it so that the problem doesn't cause further problems. The landlord shall be permitted to inspect the property with adequate notice to ensure it's in good condition. And tenants acknowledge that they're responsible for purchasing tenants insurance. See, this is all in there, but my landlord wanted me to reiterate those points in here. So, which is why I did that. So, and on here, I just put that reasonable changes to a lease renewal. So, common thing too, the landlord says, well, if I do renew, the living expenses may go up and I want to be able to renew it at a higher rent. So that's my little statement here where I'll say reasonable changes to a lease renewal may include an increase in the monthly rent due to cost of living, market fluctuations. If all obligations under the lease are met, the tenant will have the option to renew lease for an additional term as agreed upon in the lease agreement. Here, I'm saying there are no pets allowed. Now, if there was, you would say here, tenants have a pet, right? And you would say what the pet is. No smoking, so I always add in mind if there's like, there's going to be cleanup needed at the end of the lease, right? Carpeting, a good thorough clean, right? So I always put here at lease end that $200 will be deducted from the security deposit by the landlord for cleaning, and that the tenant acknowledges that $200 will be automatically deducted from the security deposit. And that eliminates that whole thing at the end where, you need to give the security deposit back and saying, I need to keep 200 because the place is dirty or whatever, like write it into the lease. So it's kind of already there. Do you guys know how long it's in the truth in renting, but do you guys know how long you have until you terminate a lease to give the security deposit back?
I can't remember. A week, 3 weeks, 3 days.
30 days, 1 month. There you go, 1 month. Yeah. That's one of those uncomfortable things too, when you're the agent, because the landlord's like, can you do the walkthrough with me? I'm like, oh boy. And then they're like, look at this, and then you're having that discussion with the tenant. Hey, you put a hole in the wall, we got to keep $100, It's like, I try to tell the landlord, you're the landlord, you need to take responsibility for it, but, as the agents, we always get dragged into those uncomfortable situations, right? So sometimes I tell the landlord, just let it go. It's not worth it. Not worth the aggravation, not worth it. Second year, purchase a home, income, okay. This one was just a special circumstance I added here because the tenants were saying, we're going into a 2-year lease, but what if we want to buy a home in between? So the landlords were flexible in this case where they would have okayed that as long as they're given adequate notice so that they can get a new tenant. So that's just the little blurb here. So this is all just customized for your landlord. That's it. And they sign it, like you would. Do you guys have any questions about this?
No.
It's pretty straightforward.
Sophia,
Yeah, pretty simple.
I have one question. Who
Yeah.
pays HOA fees usually? Is it tenant or landlord?
Okay, so HOA fees are paid by the landlord typically because that goes into the home, the cost of the home. So in this community here, and this is going to be in the MLS. So if you go up here to where it was the utilities, this breaks it down here based on what was written in the MLS. So in this development, the HOA covers all exterior and common areas. So the landlord will pay for that. But the other
Okay.
expenses, the tenant pays for. So in this case, the way I had it set up in the MLS, that the utilities, gas, electric, water, heat, sewer. I didn't put trash because trash is included in the HOA. Right, so I put these
Mhm.
are paid basically by the tenants, right, transferred into the tenant's name. These things will transfer into their name. They're going to be responsible. The landlord shall provide and pay for the following services. So I said trash because in this case, the trash was included in the HOA and other HOA fee.
Okay, thank you.
And there may be some back and forth discussion. So yeah, this is where it's going to be. It's going to be whatever is in the MLS. And then that's going to be translated here. Any other questions? And then we'll move on to the NTN. I know we're going to go a little over, but it'll be quick on the NTN.
Pretty simple.
Okay, on the NTN, so in here, the NTN docs, you're going to find under the Keller Williams, the KW 705 folder. These are where all like the new NTNs are located. You just gotta like kind of scroll down there and just find them, like see the NJ 2 New Jersey step 2 application. You can view it and see what that is. And they're gonna say like sample on it, which is, it's for legal purposes, they told me at NTN, because they always put sample. So that's okay that it says that. So what I'm going to show you that I have in my folders is all in here. See the conditional offer letter. Oh, this is the fair chance in housing disclosure. You know, make sure you give that to the landlord. Basically, it's a disclosure that's made prior to accepting an application fee from an applicant. So they should have this like with the application when you're submitting an application. And this basically describes the Fair Chance in Housing Act. What is involved? It's saying here that if you are to make a conditional offer, you will receive a secondary application inquiring about your criminal background history. So it's a 2-step process. So this is just the disclosure that just give that to them. They don't need to sign it, but they need to just have it, that you know, show that you've given it to them. So if I actually, let's go in here, let's do the flow, let's do a flow chart. All right, NTM. Okay. All right, this is the flow chart of how pretty much the procedure works. So the agent sends an NTN application link to the tenant. So there's a website that they're going to go to. And then the agent requests the decision. So they're going to go to the website. And then the agent is going to make, after they get notice that they went to the website and they completed the NTN questionnaire, they're going to notify the agent. Then the agent's going to request from NTN the decision point report. And then the report comes back very quickly. It comes back within a day, hours actually. And again, it's going to include income and credit. And then that you can show to the landlord for review. The tenant does not get that report. They're not permitted to get that report. Even though they paid for it, they're not supposed to get it. If there's an adverse event on that report, they get an adverse letter that that you can share with the tenant. But the tenant does not get the actual decision point report. That goes to the landlord. So the landlord, based on that decision point, approves them, or they can reject them. If he rejects them, then the agent provides the tenant with an adverse action letter so that the tenant knows you were rejected. This is why you got an adverse letter on there. Now, if they say, okay, they're pretty good, the landlord now approves the tenant based on that. So if he approves the tenant, then the agent provides a tenant with a conditional offer letter contingent upon a criminal report and supplemental application. So at this point, the landlord could say, you know what? I don't really care. I don't want to run a criminal check. That's okay. That's their prerogative, right? They could say, you know, I'm good with the income and the credit. I don't need to run a criminal check. If you guys remember from the NTN training that lady did, Elizabeth Uka, that came to our office and did the training, she said there's two things that's like you can flat out reject somebody for. You know, you have to be careful because you can't discriminate now, but two things that you can flat out reject somebody for: if they're a child predator, right, like a sex offender, or if they're like methamphetamine like dealers and, you know, they're making methamphetamine. Those are like the two things that you can flat out reject somebody for. Now, if they, so they can decide, you know, do I really want to run a criminal check? You know, do I want to go through that whole process where, you know, something comes up and then I have to like write up my rationale without like following like discrimination laws? You know, it is a hassle, guys, you know. They may just say, you know what, don't worry about it. I'm good with the income. So it's up to them. So here the agent will provide the tenant with a conditional offer letter based on their income and their credit. And then if they want to, then the agent is going to request a criminal report added onto the NTN. And I'll show you the form really quickly. So the top half of the report is credit and income check. And then the bottom half of the report is criminal check. So you submit the form the first time, and then you submit the form the second time with the bottom filled if they want to do a criminal check. So after they do the criminal check, again, if there's no criminal record found, great. Then you proceed to the lease. You fill out that lease that I just showed you. If there is something that comes up and there is a criminal record reported, now the landlord must, under the new law in New Jersey, allow the tenant to provide additional information, to give them an explanation. What happened? What is that? Right? The tenant is allowed to supply them with additional information, which is considered supplemental to the application now. And then the landlord makes the final decision based on the Fair Chance Act guidance. If this results in a denial, they're going to have to give a compliant adverse action letter. So there's like a form that they have to fill out now, the landlords, if they say, you know what, I'm not going to accept you, there's an actual form that they have to fill out. So, you know, my best advice is give them all the disclosures. You know, you're empowering the landlord. You are not to take responsibility, but the only thing that you guys are responsible for doing is providing them with the information. But you should be empowering the landlord with this, because the landlord is ultimately the person responsible for this. You don't bear that responsibility of being the person to say accept or reject or, you know, do all these things. Your job is stay in your lane, provide them with the disclosures, explain to them, you know, fair chance in housing, you can't discriminate, these are the rules, read it, you know, make sure that, you know, it's followed. That's it. So you guys don't don't overstep and start making decisions on the landlord's behalf, right? Let them do that. Let them do that. And so all these forms are intended for the landlord to fill out. And you can see the little notation: landlord must provide tenants with the opportunity to request all information used to screen the tenant, including information considered in criminal and non-criminal screening. Applicant must request information within 30 days of a denial. The landlord must provide the applicant the information within 10 days of receiving such a request. Right. Okay. And then let's see, screening, just kind of go through these really quick. This is kind of like the tenant screening procedure. You guys can follow. These again are all in DocuSign. It's basically just the flow chart, but written out. Disclosure. This is the disclosure statement. This is for information about how these rules apply, right? If you actually here, this talks about the landlord may consider after issuance. So after he's given a conditional offer, and let's say he ran a criminal check, right? A criminal record that resulted in a conviction for murder, aggravated assault, kidnapping, arson, falls under this. One that's for a sex offender registration, first degree. So they have first degree, second degree, fourth degree. If you guys remember from the training, this is just like a lot to take responsibility for. So again, this is for the landlord. This is for the landlord. And it has all the information. Just give this to them. If you guys actually go here, it actually breaks it down. What's considered a first degree offense, what's a second, third degree offense, what's a fourth degree offense. I mean, it gets like pretty technical. Honestly, guys, just give this to the landlord. It's like stay in your lane, right? I mean, we're not going to become like, attorneys, right? Fourth, second, third, all these things, right? All right. So these are just, all of these are, okay, notice of withdrawal. So if they actually gave them a conditional offer and now they want to withdraw, this is the formal way that the landlord's going to withdraw. You're withdrawing it because of the following reason. Okay, again, landlord. The landlord has concluded. So, I think the way that this has now been written up, it's purposely written, and you see they're going to sign. It's purposely, I feel, written in a way, obviously they're protecting the criminal history, right, of a tenant. I think they've made the process so difficult that probably many landlords will say, you know what, I'm not even going to bother. Do you guys agree? I just feel that. But again, it's totally up to them.
So this is basically like, say a tenant has a bad report or something, right?
But you can't reject them. You got to give them a flat out. You got to give them an opportunity to explain themselves,
Okay.
This is like a conditional approval letter, like formatted. I was talking to some of the other agents yesterday. It's not a bad idea that I'm going to just kind of look into maybe exploring other things other than NTN, like Rent Spree. There's different resources. Maybe there's something like a simpler version of something, We've kind of always done the NTN since I've been at Keller. A lot of people do NTN. Maybe it's the best one. I don't know. But I think it's worth exploring other sources too. Okay. This is I want to show you guys the form. Okay, this. So this is the form when you guys actually are requesting the report from NTN. You're going to fill out. So after the tenant says, okay, we filled it out. Okay, then you're going to fill in, this is for you. You're going to fill in your name, your phone number, your email address, the password. This is like the password you're going to fill out every single time so you can retrieve the report. So when the NTN emails you back, it says, okay, the decision point report is ready. And then you're going to go and log in with your email and then the password that you provided to them. Okay, and then you're going to put the applicant's name, co-applicant's name, and then agent has received notice that it's been completed. And then notice how it's 2 steps. So you got the top, the decision point report top, you got the criminal stuff. So you don't fill this stuff out. This is the second part. You're only going to fill out the top and send and email it to this orders@ntnnj.com. And
Now,
then they're going to.
where do we get this form? This form comes after.
This is in DocuSign
Okay.
in the KW 705 folder.
And what number? Yeah, I missed that. What is
It's
it?
called request for tenant credit summary.
Gotcha.
And then if the landlord says, okay, I want to run the criminal, then you pull up this report and then you literally just click this box off. And then you send it in like that. And then they'll send you a supplemental report with the criminal.
Okay.
And that's additional charge, or is that on the?
No, it's not. It's all included in the original.
Which the tenant pays?
What's that?
Which the tenant pays?
Tenant pays $40 per person over 18. That's required to do it. Okay. I think those are the important forms. And now, again, all that's in
And this is
DocuSign.
again optional, you said, right? This is like.
It's optional. I mean,
If you need
start
a
off.
tenant, you feel he's like, genuine, you don't really need to go through this process. then-
Yeah, you start off with this conversation to the landlord, give them all the disclosures, give them the information, say, this is the NTN screening process, explain it to them about how it's a two-step process. They provide a conditional offer based on the credit and income. If they want to run a criminal check, they're free to do so, but then they have to, if they're going to withdraw, they have to have good reason for withdrawing. They're protected now under the New Jersey Fair Housing. So, they may say, what, this is too much of a hassle. I don't even want to bother, So this is the, yep. Hi, Rachel.
Hi. I was told that the NTN process can take up to 14 days. Is that true?
No, it's very quick.
Okay.
No, it's very fast. If they fill out the application, it doesn't take long. Go online, fill it out. I get mine within 24 hours.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
24 hours of you requesting it. Yeah. So as soon as they tell you, oh, I'm done, request it. And I get it very quickly from NTN. Yep. Unless they're using COVID as an excuse now and everything's taking 2 weeks. I mean, yeah. But this is the form that's giving you the permission to use it. So landlord, again, they may say, yeah, I want to use it, or they may say, no, I don't really care about using it. All right. Questions about this? Again, if you guys do these rentals, I mean, we'll go through it step by step as you guys do them. It's a sequential thing. So you kind of like knock it out as you go along, Again, they are work. I'm not gonna, it's quick. You can do it quickly, but there's a lot of steps in a rental. A lot of things that you have to verify on your own. Whereas like when you do residential sale, you got the attorneys, you got the mortgage person, you got the title, right? All those things. Here, it's like you have to make sure, they're screened as per the landlord's request, verifying their income, making sure that they get tenants insurance, right? Making sure that the checks are written properly for the security deposit and the commission, right? Making sure the landlord has an interest-bearing landlord-tenant account where it's not commingled with rent, right? Those are all the things that we kind of just have to know. But definitely read that Truth in Renting. When you guys are going to do a rental, it gives a ton of information that you guys need to know in that. And share that also with the landlord so they have it too. Any questions, guys, before we call it an evening here?
No, I think this has been great.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
This is
Thursday.
awesome, Sophia. I'm sorry,
Okay.
just sharing my my
Oh,
thoughts. It's
Jimmy,
really
hi.
helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Did I answer your questions? I know you had questions, Jimmy, for me.
Yes,
Was it
yes,
questions you had?
yes. Most of the questions are answered. I do still have some specific questions. If you can stay on for a little bit, that's okay. Otherwise, I can connect later. That's fine.
I'll stay on with you. I'll stay on with you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thursday, I'm going to do, the training is going to be on open houses. Because I know it's like coming up with the weekend, right? You guys may have some open houses that you're doing. So Thursday will be kind of just a discussion about how to conduct open houses. Okay, and everybody's got different ways of doing it, right? So I'll share with you my ways, and I'm sure you guys have done a few now too, and I want to open it up for discussion, like what things you guys do that you found was helpful, right? But, open houses still remain an excellent way to generate leads. The only problem is getting those listings, right? That's the problem. So, all right, guys.
All right,
Thank you
thank
for
you, Sophia.
coming. Okay.
Thank you.
And,
Have a good
Sean,
night. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right, thank you. Good night. I'll stay on with Jimmy. All right,
Okay.
good night, everyone.
Bye.